I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Old's Oscar Countdown. And this week we're going to be taking a look at our final acting category, the Best Supporting Actress. But if you're new to the channel, welcome. What I've been doing now on our 10th season is predicting the Oscars each and every week, breaking down a different category, doing a deep dive to ultimately help you with your predictions. These are my thoughts, these are my predictions, but feel free to go ahead, leave in a comment down below to let me know your predictions, or if you have any arguments, or if you think, I'm not giving enough credit to one performance or another. I love to hear that stuff in the comments down below. We've got a great community of Oscar prognosticators, so please feel free to contribute there in the comments. And we upload these videos at least once a week, sometimes multiple times a week. Right now we're early on in the season where we're going to be covering individual of the main categories, but the Golden Globes are going to be coming up soon. Eventually the Critics' Choice. I'm going to predict things like the winners, nominations of some of those big award shows, with of course the Oscars being the final one. That's the name of the show. We're counting down to the Oscars, but along the way going to have some fun with our Oscar predictions as well as some of the other award shows. And I mention it every week, but if you just want to see my predictions, feel free to take a look at the description, see the timestamps there to jump around, and also that these aren't my final predictions. I will eventually release a video closer to Oscar nominations morning where I give a full breakdown, but right now it's just right now where we are in the season. These are my predictions. Things are changing as more and more people see movies and we start to hear back good things about something like Wicked for Good or Marty Supreme, and the Oscar race does change and evolve, but that's why we're here, to kind of break things down and ride that wave. But without further ado, let's jump into things with my predictions for the Best Supporting Actress category. Starting off with my first prediction, which is going to be Ariana Grande for Wicked for Good. And this is just generally the supporting actress category, a category I'm somewhat confident in this year. Usually some years I because we're on our 10th season, you can go back and I have no idea who's going to get nominated, and the race really does kind of evolve and change. But this year, and without being too confident, I do feel good with my predictions and who I've got so far. We have a lot of supporting actress contenders in Best Picture nominated movies, which isn't always the case, but gives us kind of some strength that if you think Wicked for Good and One Battle After Another and Sentimental Value are all going to get Best Picture nominations and maybe be in the top 5 or 6 of Best Picture contenders, well then why wouldn't some of the actors and the performances in those movies be nominated in this category? Historically, we usually will find individual sole nominations in this category for their movies, but the expansion of the Academy, we really start to see more kind of interesting supporting roles in Best Picture films, and I think that's definitely the case that we've got here. So excited to talk about my 4. And the first one, Ariana Grande, I feel really confident in, not only as a nomination, but even potentially as a win. And it's really because you almost have to come up with reasons for her not to get nominated. There's just so many kind of signals and points that lead us to thinking that she's going to get a nomination. The only kind of reason for her not to get nominated would be the movie's a complete disaster. Technically, I've never seen the movie. She's not really in the movie a lot. And even still, then she may have enough goodwill to get nominated. But you kind of do the opposite then. Okay, if you can't find any reasons for her not to get nominated, what are the reasons for her to get nominated? What are the reasons? Well, first of all, the obvious one, she was nominated for this performance in this film series just last year for the original Wicked, so why wouldn't she get nominated again for the second movie? Like I said, the movie barring being a complete disaster, but those kind of first reactions that we have got, albeit they are first reactions, but have kind of mentioned her performance in particular, as well as the movie being very good. So you have that side, you have a past nominee for this performance from a movie they well like. Now it's the sequel to a movie just a year later, so it should be an automatic kind of a nomination in that sense. She sings in the movie that I think in the second part of the stage musical is maybe a little bit less song focused, but also maybe a little bit more emotional. And also, we mentioned this last week, but I think and this is more so from a win perspective, but it's so important for a win, but even for a nomination, to have a lot of screen time in your movie. If you even compare, say, the top 2 contenders in this category, when you think of a movie like Wicked or Wicked for Good, you think of Elphaba and Glinda. I mean, Ariana Grande is essentially a co-lead. She's campaigning in the supporting actress category, but she is essentially the co-lead of the movie. Whereas someone like a Teyana Taylor, who's very good in One Battle After Another, I don't know if you think of One Battle After Another and you immediately think of her because there's so many great characters. I mean, you think of Leo, or you think of Chase Infinity, or Benicio, or Sean Penn. I mean, a bunch of different people kind of come out of that movie and they go, I loved Benicio, or I love Leo, or Penn, or they all have their different kind of people that they really love. Whereas when you think of Wicked, it's less of that's a Jeff Goldblum movie, right? Or that's a Michelle Yeoh movie. You think of it as the two. It's the pair. That's the marketing. Those are the two that they're kind of emphasizing. She's essentially the co-lead of the movie. She just happens to be campaigning in the supporting actress category, which has been confirmed by Variety. So we can talk about maybe her chances at a win later on in the season, because I am very confident she gets to get nominated. But as of right now, for a chance for a nomination, she sings, dances in the movie, has a little bit more of an emotional arc this time around, is essentially the co-lead of the movie. One of the new songs that was added into the movie is her song, so they're really trying to emphasize her more. And some of the early reactions mention how great she is within the film. So she's kind of my most confident nomination. Am I guaranteed she's going to win? No, but I'm maybe a little bit more confident in her chances than some of the other people in this category, or maybe even some other Oscar prognosticators think. I don't know if we've really even given her a serious chance of a win, mostly because not many people, or any people, have seen the film. But I think once it does come out, that will start to be a little bit clearer. Then my second pick, I went with Teyana Taylor for One Battle After Another. And I think this is the most complicated character, but also maybe the most interesting character in One Battle After Another. Essentially the lead of the movie for the first 40 minutes, and then drops off in the kind of second and third bits of the movie, second and third acts. And in this really kind of extended epilogue. And even though she does kind of disappear from the movie in the second half, her presence lingers. Now, I don't want to spoil the movie for anyone who hasn't seen it. Terrific movie. You should check it out. But if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about in terms of just her legacy, and people constantly refer to her character in the second half. So she is still kind of lingering throughout the movie. And does make, I think, a notable impact within that first 40 minutes, really being the lead character, and Leonardo DiCaprio is kind of just following her along with it. That being said, I do think that I'm a little bit more dubious of this potentially as a win, because I think her character is a little bit divisive, which will hurt. When you're talking about an actual win, you kind of have to have broad support, but not necessarily for nominations, which is what we're talking about today. So what we have ultimately is essentially the lead of the movie for the first 40 minutes of the movie. A movie in which I think is going to be a Best Picture contender, a Best Director contender, in terms of actually winning, like a really well-liked movie. So you have a really well-liked movie and a key supporting role, so essentially the lead of the movie for the first 40 minutes. I think if you like this movie, a lot of people will also like this performance. And because it's just a nomination, all you need is a lot of fans, which we know One Battle After Another has, and then enough fans of that movie itself to also really like Teyana Taylor's performance within itself. And we also have been seeing in the past 2 years, when the Academy really likes a movie, it tends to kind of be over-nominated in terms of nominations, particularly when it comes to Oscar mornings, whether it be Everything Everywhere All at Once, or movies like The Power of the Dog. We see kind of surprise nominations even on Oscar nominations morning, because they just really like this movie. So if I really believe that they like this movie as much as they do, Teyana Taylor, who's a key part of the movie, the mysterious character, the hard-to-read character, the excellent performance from Teyana Taylor in kind of the arc of her character. She is this kind of alluring presence that lingers as well throughout the rest of the movie. I think if you like this movie, you probably have some connection to that character in particular, and I think Teyana Taylor is a big standout of this movie in the same way that Sean Penn or Benicio del Toro is, and is competing in a bit of a weaker category when you talk about something like the supporting categories in terms of the amount of people that have screen time and things like that. She has a very solid amount of screen time in one of the key movies of the year, and I think that will be enough ultimately to get her a nomination. Then my third and fourth nominations, I'm going to pair them together because they're from the same movie. I'm going to go with Inga Ibsdotter Lilleaas from Sentimental Value and Elle Fanning from Sentimental Value. I think both of these ladies will be nominated for Best Supporting Actress. And it's a little bit of how I mentioned at the top of this episode, where you have Wicked for Good, likely Best Picture nominee, same thing with One Battle After Another, same thing with Sentimental Value. And because you have two really key, great supporting performances in a movie that's all about acting and writing, why wouldn't they get nominated? That's kind of the crux of the argument. Because you may have a preference between one of the two ladies, or you may really like Renate Reinsve in the movie, or some of the other characters, but I think if you really connect with this movie, like I think the Academy will, then you like kind of the ensemble and want to reward the ensemble. And in a category that has been historically weak and historically lacking Best Picture nominees, the fact that there is a Best Picture nominee with two really great supporting actress performances, I think that will be enough to kind of get that nomination. I also think it's notable, and I talked about this last week, that the Academy, in particular the recent Academy within the past 8 years, has really liked to reward actors from the same movie to get them nominated in the same category. So we mentioned, I think, Sean Penn and Benicio del Toro, both from one battle after another, will both get nominated in the supporting actor category. And we talked about last week, 7 out of the last 8 years in either one of the two supporting categories, either actor or actress, this has happened. Two people from the same movie in the same category getting nominated. And it makes sense when you think about it. They like the movie, they want to reward as many people from the movie as possible. There's a kind of clear connection there, where it would be weird to say, oh, I love Sentimental Value and I want to nominate the directing and the screenplay, but I'm not going to nominate any of the acting performances. This is not a movie like Top Gun Maverick or Avatar, right, where it has no acting performances and a bunch of technical love. This is more of like a Banshees of Inisherin that gets a lot of screenplay and acting and picture love. And that's a subset of Best Picture type of contenders, right? They're either more the technical, below the line type of supporters that get the Best Picture nomination, or they're kind of more of an actor's favorite. And this is definitely that kind of a movie. So if you do think it's a Best Picture contender, like I do, and every sign we've seen has indicated that in terms of critical reviews, in terms of TIFF, International People's Choice runner-up, in terms of Grand Prix at Cannes, every kind of festival has really appreciated this movie. So let's just assume right now, okay, it's getting nominated for Best Picture, maybe even Best Director. Well, what kind of a movie it is it? Well, I've seen the movie. It's a acting, writing type of a movie where they take a lot of time talking about the complex family dynamics in the film. If you're talking about maybe one preference or one of the two maybe only gets in, maybe I kind of lean with Inga, just because she has a little bit more of those non-English language scenes between both Stellan and Renata, so she has a little bit more time and is sparse throughout more of the story, whereas Elle Fanning, for the most part, is entirely speaking English and really is only interacting with the Stellan Skarsgård's character, except for one scene with Renata. So it is kind of, Inga's a little bit more with throughout the film. That being said, I still have them both in kind of the way that I'm thinking about it is, okay, they're both excellent in the film. Inga is a little bit more within the film and a little bit more of a natural fit because she's speaking Norwegian and they're in Norway. But then you have Elle Fanning, who is the more known celebrity in that sense. I don't think a lot of people have seen Inga in any of her other films, mostly a Norwegian actress, whereas Elle Fanning has steadily built up a very interesting resume for herself, whether it be in these prestige movies for now, almost 10 years of things like The Neon Demon or They Live by Night, or even something like The Beguiled, or last year with A Complete Unknown. She's really starting to establish herself as an interesting young prestige-focused movie star, and just recently starred in Predator Badlands. So is something that she's really started to develop herself as a kind of young, exciting movie star, but someone that is also someone that is respected and not doing a bunch of schlocky movies. She's been in Best Picture or Best Picture adjacent type movies. Now, she would be the one I'd have a concern to not get nominated, just because her role within the movie is of an outsider, is of this kind of American woman trying to enter and trying to fit into something that she's not necessarily properly fitting in for. That being said, she's good at doing that. She plays that uncomfortability and that awkwardness very well. And she has one real key kind of crying scene within the movie that's very notable. So I think about this very simply. I think about the movie and I go, everyone who's seen it really enjoys it. And I think this is also a movie that the Academy will enjoy. Okay, well, then will they want to nominate performances from the movie? Yes, it's a performance-focused movie. Okay, which performances? Well, definitely Renata. She's well known in the lead of the movie. Stellan is a legendary actor who's arguably the co-lead of the movie. Then you have these kind of ensemble supporting characters, and two characters who are in a lot of the movie. One, Elle Fanning, a little bit more of a well-known name within the American members of the Academy, and also has one real dynamite crying scene. And then Inga, more of a newcomer, but more interesting, I think, within the story, in terms of more integral to the story. more of a almost co-lead, you could say, has a lot of scenes, is with throughout the movie, and does also have kind of her emotional scenes as well, and there's a little bit more of a discovery, which feels good, I think, for a lot of Academy members. We've also started to see more international performances start to get nominated. You think of someone like Fernanda Torres for I'm Still Here, for example. I'm really starting to bet on some of these foreign language performances in my acting predictions, so I think that is actually a positive sign for her. And then, you get that kind of combination and you go, okay, well, let's nominate both of them. Let's get them in here. The Academy likes to do this, even in the supporting actress category, whether it be, the two ladies from Everything Everywhere All at Once or The Favorite. It is something that continually does to show up time and time again in this category. So why not again this year for a really well-liked Best Picture contender? Then my fifth prediction, I went with Gwyneth Paltrow for Marty Supreme. And this was a pick that I'm not very confident in. I'm very confident in parts in those first four nominations. I think they're really strong. They're connected to Best Picture contenders. I've seen, 3 of the 4 performances, and it makes sense within the types of performances that the Academy likes to nominate. But in this fifth spot, I think I'm going to be the Academy is going to be in a similar position as I am, which is to say, I don't know if any of these individual performances are super inspiring, and therefore they're going to default to the one with the person that is the most well-known. That was ultimately my argument here. I looked at the movie Marty Supreme, which I haven't seen yet, but from all reports is very good, and it is a Best Picture contender and even potentially a Best Director contender. I looked at the movie and I go, okay, well, if this movie really is a Best Picture contender, Best Director contender, what other nominations is it going to get? Okay, it's going to get Chalamet, most likely. We've got that. But is it going to get production design or costume design? Maybe. I think it's probably going to get editing or score. Those are a little bit more in consideration. But it's kind of be odd for it to get, let's say, screenplay, director, picture, and then just editing. Usually those types of movies pick up at least a couple of acting nominations. So we have Chalamet. What's going to be the other acting nomination? If this really is a contender, I don't think it would be so crazy to say Marty Supreme ends up getting 2 acting nominations. In the same way, another late-breaking Timothée Chalamet movie that came out last year with A Complete Unknown. Not a lot of people had Edward Norton on their radar. Nobody really had Monica Barbaro on their radar, and then they surprised and were really great in the movie and ultimately got nominated. So I'm trying to look ahead. I'm trying to presuppose, a movie I haven't seen and go, okay, well, who's the kind of obvious nomination? Who's the obvious kind of breakout performer within the film? Now, if we were to pick the potential breakout of the film, from the people who have seen the movie, almost universally, from what I've seen, people have mentioned Odessa Zion as being the kind of clear character performer breakout from the film. But ultimately, I didn't go with that because I think that it's important to consider for the Oscars that it's not always what's the best. Sometimes it's the most well-known, or it's a little bit of a popularity contest. And particularly within the Best Supporting Actress or supporting categories, we see this, whether it be someone like a Judi Dench beating out Katrina Balfe in her own movie in Belfast, or a year later was on the male side of things, Judd Hirsch beating out Paul Dano for The Fabelmans. In these supporting categories, the actors have a preference to reward the kind of older actor rather than the newer actor, and the person that they know the most or has the clearest kind of movie star persona. In the same way with Judi Dench in Belfast, I would say Katrina Balfe in that movie had a more interesting character arc with a more developed character, but Judi Dench was in the movie and she was sweet and she had a couple good moments, so she was ultimately the one that got nominated. And I think a similar situation will happen here with Gwyneth Paltrow. Obviously not that old, but when you think about the supporting actor category and why I think this phenomenon ultimately happens is because when you have these kind of true supporting roles like Gwyneth Paltrow and Marty Supreme, I'm not talking about borderline co-leads like Ariana Grande, but these true supporting roles, because they're supporting and they qualify in the supporting acting category, they don't have a lot of screen time. So what does that mean? They have to make good use of the screen time that they do have. They have to be memorable within the film. And when you have a young actress like Odessa Zion, who truly, I don't think I've ever seen, I think most members of the Academy have never seen in anything. She has very limited credits to her name. It's going to be a real hard battle for her to overcome in a late release, someone who they've never seen before, to ultimately get that nomination. Versus Gwyneth Paltrow, I think at the end of the day, Marty Supreme, when it comes out, people are going to be talking about the score, the editing, how great Chalamet was. And then it's going to take a lot for a newcomer to really say, oh, and also Odessa Zion was so great in the movie. versus someone like a Gwyneth Paltrow, where you may think about the movie and you think about Chalamet, but because Paltrow has such an outsized movie star persona, you immediately think about her. In the same way, when you think about Belfast, you think about Judi Dench, not necessarily because her character was so much better than, let's say, Katrina Balf's, but because she's a more recognizable movie star, more recognized kind of a name, and you need less of that relationship. In the early scenes of Marty Supreme, when you're learning about Odessa Zion, you almost need to be convinced that she's good. Whereas the first scene with Gwyneth Paltrow, you go, oh, that's Gwyneth. I've seen that before. I've seen her before. She's a famous person. She's a past Oscar winner. How nice would it be for her to get another nomination 25 years after the fact? It would be kind of, an interesting narrative point from that point of view. So it's less so from the performance and more so from the recognizability factor of it. I think that A24, because this is their big movie of the year, will be campaigning this movie quite a bit. They're going to want to get their money back, truthfully, because this was an expensive movie. So they're going to be promoting particularly the movie stars of the movie, the recognizable names, which, yes, does include Gwyneth Paltrow. She's natural at doing her kind of charm and her campaigning. She has her podcast, so she's comfortable at kind of doing those type of social interactions and those functions. So she's going to have some friends within the Academy that are going to want to nominate her, and she'll have some influence and pull. So even though the reports indicate that her performance isn't super noticeable or super dynamic, I think because of the late release, because the movie, I still think, will be well liked. When people think about the movie, they're going to really like it, I think. Best Picture, Best Director, Chalamet. And then they're also going to go, you know what? I just like Gwyneth Paltrow, so I'm going to nominate her here. She's connected to a strong Best Picture contender, and she's a well-liked actress. So I think that will kind of ultimately push her over the edge. Now, speaking of some possible contenders, though, the first one I have is Odessa Zion. And that's because the other way could kind of break for her in Marty Supreme. Maybe the movie comes out and it's clear to everybody that Odessa Zion is the clear kind of best supporting actress, the kind of almost as good as Chalamet type performance within the movie. I haven't seen it, so I don't want to comment on that. But the same thing happened with Monica Barbaro last year with A Complete Unknown. People thought maybe Elle Fanning, and then they saw the movie and they were like, oh no, it's Monica Barbaro. And she ultimately did get nominated. Same thing could happen here with Odessa Zion. But if there's any kind of a split, if it's any kind of like some people really like Gwyneth, some people really like Odessa, Gwyneth, because she has the movie star power, ultimately put her in here. But like I said, if there isn't a split and it's everyone agreeing that Odessa Zion is the kind of clear front runner, she's still a young actress. She's going to be a discovery for many people. She's going to be connected to a movie that's really well liked. If she has these emotional moments in a key movie, that could only help her chances at getting a nomination. Right now, though, I'm being a little bit conservative and saying there may be some people that like Gwyneth Paltrow a little bit more. She may not have enough time at that Christmas release to kind of announce herself and her name. It may be the Chalamet show, and maybe he's so great in this movie, we're pushing Chalamet and lead. That's our best chance. Odessa, if you get in, you get in, but we're not really going to promote you as this big, breakout young star in the same way that we are going to put all of our resources behind Chalamet. So kind of those more technical, behind-the-scenes campaigning type of things push her on the outside and put her, though, still as a strong possible contender. And then my final possible contender, I went with Amy Madigan for Weapons. And I remember back in August, I thought, you know what, I'm going to go a little bit crazy and I may consider her a possible contender. I know she's not going to get nominated, but I'm going to put her in my Oscar predictions. And then I was amazed to see a lot of other Oscar prognosticators not only consider her a possible contender, but a real contender. I thought I was a crazy person considering it in August. And now you see a lot of serious Oscar experts and contenders really consider her and put her in their predictions. But ultimately, I'm not, because I'm in a bit of a wait and see mode. Because on paper, in terms of the type of performance that this is, it doesn't get nominated. And, when I look at the Oscars, I'm not trying to give my own personal opinion. I try to remove that from the Oscars. And we've on our 10th season now, and I've done very well. Very accurate predictions year over year. You could go back and check. Many of them I'm very accurate. So the reason why I'm accurate, I think, in part is because I try to remove that personal opinion and look at some of the stats and try to put myself in the mind of the larger Academy. And in the same way I talked about Ariana Grande having so many reasons for her, and pretty much you'd have to come up with a reason for her not to get nominated, the opposite is the case for Amy Madigan. I'm trying to come up with reasons for her to get nominated, because the Oscars are not just based on what's the best performance of the year. Sometimes it's what movie has been seen. Are they overdue? Are they a well-liked actress? I mean, there are other factors that we'd like to consider. And as much as I'd like to say Amy Madigan was so great in the movie, that's why she's going to get nominated, frankly, that's the only thing she has going for her. I think it's universally agreed upon in a popular movie that she is very good in the movie. But there's so many things going against her. I mean, she's almost too good in the movie. She's so transformative. I don't know if everyone immediately goes, oh, that's Amy Madigan, Field of Dreams, Amy Madigan. That's past Oscar nominee, Amy Madigan. And I've heard some people say, oh, they're going to love her because she was a past Oscar nominee. Yeah, 40 years ago she got nominated. How many people within the Academy that nominated her are still in the Academy today? Not that many. That was 40 years ago. That was a long time ago. I don't think a lot of people even know she was nominated. And at least what I'm seeing so far, it's like, so she's very good in the movie, yes. She is a true supporting actor, though, and isn't in the movie until the third act, really. She's not doing any campaigning. I haven't seen any kind of Q&As or interviews. She's been kind of very reserved and not out there, which will ultimately hurt her chances at getting a nomination. This type of performance, a horror movie, a horror performance like this, never gets nominated. Ask Lupita Nyong'o for Us. Ask Toni Collette for Hereditary. The Academy just doesn't even like this genre. This is also being distributed and campaigned by Warner Brothers, who already has One Bell After Another and Sinners, who they're going to be putting a lot of their resources towards. I don't think they're going to really nominate Weapons a lot. If Weapons doesn't get in for something like Best Original Screenplay, you're essentially saying Amy Madigan is going to be a sole nominee from her movie, which is another knock against her. So look at an actress who is almost so good in the movie, she's so transformative, people don't even realize it's her. She's not doing enough campaigning to tell people that it's her. The distributor isn't really putting a lot of money behind this because they have other stronger Best Picture contenders. It may be a sole nominee from her movie in a genre that isn't well appreciated by the Academy. Truthfully, you have to go, what are the reasons for her to get nominated when there's so many reasons for her not to get nominated? And now it may be the case that she's just so amazing in the movie that she gets nominated. It is a very popular movie, so I think a lot of people just generally going to the cinema and end up seeing the film. But to get a lot of the kind of anti-horror Academy member voters to ultimately see the movie and then want to nominate her here, especially when you look at my 5 lineup. These are all supporting actress nominees from Best Picture contenders. And if it's not Gwyneth Paltrow, it could be Odessa Zion, make that 6. So she has to come over, I think, an incredible amount of potential nominees in likely Best Picture nominated movies that we know the Academy will like. So will they like Amy Madigan so much more in a movie that maybe they don't love as much when they don't necessarily even know it's her, when she's not even campaigning, in a genre that they don't really like? There's too many things going against her, so I ultimately decided to say, let's do a wait and see. I'd be surprised if Amy Madigan gets nominated. Gladly surprised, but on paper, it's not the type of performance that they like. And even though it's very good, ultimately we're trying to predict the Academy. This is not personal taste. We have to try to remove that out of there, get off kind of film Twitter and talk about the reality of things. And the reality of things is that Amy Madigan would be a very rare type of performer in a type of performance to get nominated in this category. But that's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you comment below. Let me know your thoughts on the Best Supporting Actress category. And stay tuned to next week, Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm going to be breaking down the Best Director category before we're getting into screenplay predictions and then some of the other kind of above-the-line cinematography, animated. I think early on I'm going to talk about the Best Casting category. That's a new category this year, and I'm going to do a real deep dive on that to ultimately help you indicate what we think is going to happen, but it's a new category, so we'll see. But this one was a lot of fun. Like I said, please comment below. Let me know your predictions as well. And yeah, until next time, stay tuned.